Hey guys, it's Lauren. Today I'm going to be sharing with you 13 tips for backpacking through Europe. I went to Europe last month. It was my first time backpacking, but it was not my first time in Europe. Backpacking was definitely a unique experience for me. I'm not a light packer if you know me, but it was definitely something that I would do again. And if you are on the fence about it, thinking about it, kind of not sure, I hope these tips are helpful for you and I would definitely recommend it. But before I hop into the 13 tips, I am sharing my itinerary. Right now I am back home in California, but when I left, I was on the East Coast. So we flew out of Dulles and then we went to Iceland for 3 days, to Ireland for 3 days, London for 4 days, all the way over to Santorini for 5 days, Athens for 2 days, Rome for 2 days, Barcelona for 4 days, Paris for 4 days, and then Brussels, which we flew out of for 1 day, back into BWI. So my first tip is to have a plan. And this isn't for the purposes of, you know, having a schedule with hours, minutes, seconds on it, but it is helpful to have an idea of what you want to get done. For me, it was especially helpful, and I really wanted to have that going in because I like to be organized, and I like to have an idea of what I want to do. You never follow things to a T. Things happen when you're in a new place especially, but you never want to have downtime that you weren't expecting, where you're just kind of like in limbo, not really sure what to do next. Tip number 2 is to do your research before you go. And I cannot emphasize this enough. I think it's so important to at least have some sort of general idea about the country that you're going to. General areas, public transport, general cost of how much things might be there so you're not blindsided, foods that you have to try, places that are iconic that you must hit, and just having a general idea of all these things will help you, because you can always look stuff up when you're there, sure, but you want to save the time and, you know, make the most of every moment that you are there. One more reason that I want to advocate for doing research before you go is because knowing what you want to do in each country or place that you go will help you determine how many days you want to spend in each country. Tip number 3 kind of goes along with tip number 2, and I hope that it goes without saying, but it is to get excited. I have major FOMO, or fear of missed opportunity. So before I left, I made a mental list, or I wrote it down, but I thought of a lot of things that I wanted to see. Places I wanted to go, foods I wanted to try, restaurants I wanted to hit, areas I wanted to see, pictures I wanted to take, everything. And it really helped clear my mind, because when I was there I did not have a lot of downtime to just kind of sit and look things up, and service, like I said, was spotty. So it's just good to have kind of general expectations for yourself before you go. Tip number 4, which is to grab a map. I know this is a little bit old-fashioned and everybody has maps on their phone. I use mine all the time. But the reason that I'm saying to grab a paper map when you're at the airport or the train station or wherever you come in is because not only is service spotty, but having everything that you want to do drawn on a map, you know, pinpointed where you want to go, really helps you visualize how you're going to plan your days and how you're going to tackle one area this part of the day, this part another day, and see what you really have time for. So now that I have advocated for physical maps, I also want to advocate for apps on the phone. So this leads me to tip number 5. I want to provide some apps for you that I think would be super helpful. Number 1 is Google Drive. This is where I stored all of my research. We had like Excel sheets going for the cost of everything, notes for each country, notes of each other's like passport and personal information just in case anything happened, and you're able to download everything offline into the Google Docs app. And it's a little annoying to have to download both, but it's really worth it, and having access offline makes a world of difference when you're there. If you don't already have it, some sort of maps app, because even if it can't provide you step-by-step directions when you don't have service, it can still find out where you are on the map, and you can tell what direction you're going and kind of like visualize what direction you need to be going in. So it kind of forces you to learn directions a little bit, but it's really helpful. In addition to that, I would say to have the local transport app. So like DC has the Metro app, London we used a lot, it was the Tube app, and it makes it so easy. You just put in, you know, I want to be at this place, you know, via stop, and it will tell you, oh, take like the green line this way, purple line this way, and it just makes it so easy. The next app to have is the currency converter, and if you have an iPhone, I'm not sure about Androids, guys, sorry, but if you swipe right, you can type in like 25 euros converts to this X amount of dollars. But when you don't have service, it's good to have just kind of a general idea. While it fluctuates, like I said, while you're in the store and you want to kind of know if something's worth it, it's really helpful to have that. The next app I would say is to get the steps counter. For me, it was really interesting to see how many steps I walked each day. Athens, I think, was our highest, if I remember correctly. It was like 30,000 steps, which is crazy. Uber and Lyft. Some countries do not have Uber, and some countries it is illegal, but just have it just in case, because if you are in the event where you can't find public transport, it's not available, and you need to get from one place to another very quickly, or it's, you know, kind of a rough area, it's good to have just as backup. Tip number 6, it was really handy to always have cash on us, and coins are valuable because chances are you're probably going to use them. The way that things are priced in Europe, honestly, it makes way more sense in here because it's usually rounded to the nearest dollar, so it'll be like 150, not like 159 for a candy bar or something like that. Know that if you do want to transfer it to euros somewhere, don't do it at the airport because their exchange fees are usually a lot higher. You should also have a debit card or a credit card as well if you don't already have one. I called my bank ahead of time to make sure that I didn't have a foreign transaction fee, and I thought the card that I had at the time did, so I ended up getting a new card for the trip. A lot of places, both domestic and abroad, don't accept American Express for some reason. Most of the places do accept MasterCard and Visa if they are accepting cards at all. Number 7 is inter-country travel. Depending on what countries you're going to in Europe, most of them are in the EU, but just be aware of traveling between those countries, because once you're in an EU country and you travel between them, it makes it so much easier, especially if you're flying, to not have to go through that external EU security process. Also, sometimes paying a little bit extra for a more convenient time to fly is definitely worth it. Maybe taking 3 red eyes back to back isn't gonna get you the best sleep, and you're gonna be really tired when you get there. Tip number 8 is getting around. Every country is different. Some of them may not use public transport primarily, others you might need to rent a car. So this is why it's good to look into what kind of things you want to do, because in Iceland, Ireland, and Santorini, we rented cars. Before you go to the country planning to rent a car, look into some companies so you have a general idea of what the cheapest place might be. And if you can, make a reservation like we did before you go so that you don't have to wait in line, you don't have to check availability. So tip number 9 is where to stay. And the most important thing about this is location. Why, when we looked into Paris, some of the places were really cheap, but it's because they were so far out from the main part. And I think it's worth it to pay a little bit more, sometimes a lot more, to be in the central area, because thinking about public transport, the convenience of it all, the amount of time that you have, sometimes it's better to just splurge a little bit for that experience. So we didn't have a huge budget, which is why we looked into Airbnbs and hostels. And none of us had stayed in hostels before, but I heard good things about it from my friends. We stayed in mostly Airbnbs, except for 3 hostels in Galway, Dublin, and London. And they were all super nice. They all provided like a small light breakfast. And the London hostel, I think, is one of my favorite places that we stayed because it was so clean. It was like a really nice hotel, perfect location, really nice street. The way that it worked out for us is because we had 6 people, most of the hostels did private rooms of 6. If you're traveling by yourself, then you'd be placed in one of those rooms, but we rented out the whole room. Tip number 10 may come as a no-brainer, but pack light and pack early. Very minimalist. And I practiced putting everything in my backpack, but of course I kind of waited till the last minute to actually put it in. And then I was kind of an hour late to the airport because I was still trying to fit everything in my backpack, and you know, taking random stuff out wasn't working because everything was in Ziploc bags. So just do it ahead of time and really only bring the things that you think you're going to wear. A separate video on packing tips, but bring a lock that is not only TSA approved, but one that's big enough where it will fit on a locker if you do end up staying at a hostel. Over the course of the whole trip, I think I got a lot of really good pictures. I took like 10 SD cards. I remember waking up at 5 a.m. in Paris to go to the Trocadero, which is this big area in front of the Eiffel Tower. It's like a tiled floor, and a lot of people take pictures there. So I dragged everyone out really early and got some great pictures. Tip number 12 is to talk to people. I think I bugged basically everybody that I knew on Facebook, Instagram, everything about where they went in Europe. I'm really glad that I did, no shame, and I hope that people do the same to me because it's a gold mine of information. They can provide, you know, hidden gems that they didn't know about, their opinions. You know, everybody's trip is different, but it's always nice to hear from their perspective. Last and final tip number 13 is to have a positive mindset, to run into problems, challenges, unforeseen circumstances, but that's all part of the experience, and that's part of what makes things memorable. I know that some of our fondest memories that we reminisced about on our way back were some of the most unexpected random occurrences that were spontaneous and, you know, maybe annoying at the time, but we look back and we laugh about it. And just going in with that positive energy and that willingness to be open and understanding of other people is going to do you so much good. It's okay if you need to get alone time to just recharge and continue so that your trip is a success for you and everyone else. So I hope these 13 tips were helpful for you if you ever go. If you guys have more questions, please ask them below. I would be so happy to answer them or give you any advice that I didn't mention in this video already. I think I'm going to be doing a packing video on everything that I brought and things to bring and not to bring. But yeah, it was really an amazing experience. I have no regrets about any of it. The only thing that I wish was that I could have been there longer. I would definitely do it again, 10 out of 10. And I hope that if you guys are thinking about it, that you are no longer on the fence and you are ready to book your first flight. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next Monday. Bye!